Welcome to CWS Christian Writing and Speaking. I'm your host, Jackie Wilson. And today's guest says she is a small town girl who was led by God to move halfway across the world. Following the voice of God down unknown paths in foreign countries has been a wild ride. She says she has laughed, cried, bled, and been at times hopelessly lost. But she says there is nothing superhuman or super spiritual about her, but she is willing to tell her story, all of it. And in her upcoming book, Hard is Only Half the Story, she does tell it all. And it is full of true stories from her life, the good, the mess ups, and the hard. It's all there. She is passionate about encouraging others who are stuck in the hard parts of their lives. Hard is real, but so is its potential to enrich our lives. Let's welcome to the CWS stage, Miss Wendy Zahorjanski. I'm so excited to have you here, Wendy, and just for people to hear your story, because a lot of people be like, whoa, leave and go around the world not knowing exactly what it is that I'm going to do. So many people would be afraid of that, but you were brave enough to take that step of faith to listen to God's voice and just go and do it. Can you tell us your story?
Sure. I love telling my story because I think that it's not anything crazy, even though it may seem crazy to people that I moved halfway across the world. But just following the voice of God, I think that with Him, the crazy things can seem not so crazy because He's with us and next to us. And I think that's my story. My story starts when I was a little girl because my mom had a rule in our house. For every fiction book we read, we had to read a biography. So I grew up reading all these biographies, and most of them were missionary biographies. So my heroes became people like Gladys Aylward, like Hudson Taylor, like Lilias Trotter, these missionaries who also moved across the world and were following God's voice. So I think through them, that the Lord really used that to plant a little seed in my heart that I always had a desire to move somewhere outside of the United States. And then high school came and teenager, and that could be confusing and kind of trying to figure out what do I do with my life practically and those things. And I found myself at 19 having finished 1 year of college, but not sure what to major in. I didn't have money really to go back, and I just didn't know what to do. And I was talking to my brother, who is 5 years older than me, and at the time was living in Kyrgyzstan, which is, for those who don't know, a country that's next to China in Central Asia. And he said, well, why don't you just move over here and live with us, and you can pray about it and figure it out when you're here. And I thought for a while and I couldn't think of a good reason to say no. So I said, sure. And so I moved over with him, and I lived with him and his wife. And at that time, they had 2 kids, and just prayed about what to do with my life. And I ended up living there for 6 months. And then the Lord used that as a stepping stone to lead me to a Bible college in the country of Hungary, where I studied for 3 years because I felt like I needed a lot more equipping when I was in Kyrgyzstan. I saw for the first time that I needed to be sure of what I believed. And if I was going to be telling people about Jesus and about this faith that had changed my life, I really needed more of a grounded perspective, and not just perspective, but like a training to be trained better. So I ended up studying there for 3 years, and I ended up studying with my future husband. That's where we met. And he started telling me about his desire to go back to Serbia, where he was from, and to plant churches there, and started telling me about how just it was a country where not a lot of people, they knew who the name of God because they were Orthodox, but not necessarily who Jesus was, and not didn't know that he wanted to know them personally. And so, yeah, his burden really was the seed that the Lord used to create a burden within me for Serbia. And so we ended up moving down and we got married, and that was 11 years ago. And now we're still here, and I'm still here, and we're still married. So it worked out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's such an amazing story because we never know what God may use to propel us into what He really wants for our lives. So let's talk about your book a little bit. Tell people the title again
Yeah, so it's called Hard is Only Half the Story.
and why that title.
I really wanted to highlight, I've read a lot of missionary biographies, as what I said, but I really wanted to highlight not so much the hard aspect of being a missionary or a cross-cultural worker, which there are a lot of hard things. And I've read a lot of books, and I noticed there was a lot of information about the hardships, about adapting, about the difficulties of moving into the unknown or learning a new language. But I really wanted to highlight the other half, that it can be a potential place for enrichment that the Lord can use. I talk about it in my book as the rebuilding of a heart. And he really did use it to rebuild my heart in a way that all of the unknown and all of the difficulties were actually his hand that was kind of getting rid of some of the junk that was in my life, that, the sin or the stuff that I was really oblivious to, but all of a sudden in this environment of being stripped down to the core of who I was, because I couldn't talk, because I couldn't communicate, you kind of become dependent on everybody else and like a little baby. But that was the perfect spot for the Lord to speak to me about some of these things. And it really ended up being an opportunity to take a second look at some of those things, and to be enriched by the Lord, and also by the new people that I found myself surrounded with, because they were so different that I was able to learn some things that my culture just couldn't teach me.
Mm. And what do you want people to take away from the book?
Yeah, I really want to encourage people that the unknown doesn't need to be even a different culture or a different language, but that there's unknown things that are all around us, that maybe someone's hearing the voice of the Lord to go or to do it. And I just want to encourage them to do it. That if I can do it, then anybody can do it, because it's God, the same God who's next to us, that it actually doesn't matter if we're these amazing people. Or that's why I say I'm not super spiritual or superhuman. We don't need to be, because we have this God who sees every detail of our heart, but also holds the whole universe in the palm of his hand. So we have that kind of intimacy and power going along with us. So if we have that, then I really believe that anybody can go into the unknown and follow his voice and really impact the people around them, but also be impacted by the new surroundings that they find themselves in.
I like what you said at the end. And I want you to share with us, what type of impact have you seen upon people since you started this work? And also, what is the greatest impact on you as a person?
Ooh, that's a hard question. I think that the impact that I see, well, it's easier to answer the second part of the question is what's impacted me. I'll start there and then go to the other one. But I think one of the biggest impacts that the Serbian people have had on me is the mentality of interdependency and not being so independent. American culture is really individualistic, and sometimes that could be a good thing, but I think that actually a more biblical perspective is more of the community and more of this interdependence. And the Serbian people do that really, really well. They love people. If you go out to coffee, you're going to sit for 2 or 3 hours with somebody. They just have this like mentality that they'll be late to work for you, for a person, if it needs, the person's always above the task. I just think that that is actually really biblical. And they really care about the people who are like their people. If you're their person, then you can call them in the middle of the night. You can ask them for anything. And so I've seen especially in the church context, so that's even the secular context is really good at that. But then when you get the Holy Spirit, like filling people who already have that strength, I just see I've never been a part of a church with such a strong community as here. So I think that's impacted me to allow some of my walls to come down and to learn, or at least start learning, to ask for help or to be more open, kind of to be interdependent and not so independent. So that's been a really big impact for me, and to think about others, people, more than the things I need to get done or my to-do list or that kind of thing, but to think about the people around me. And as for me, or the impact that we're having here, I see that that the view that people have in general that I've met, the view that they have of God is very much a distant, that he's far away, that he's distant, that he's kind of waiting for them to make a mistake so that he can get them. You know what I mean? So that he can throw down the fire and the brimstone, so that he can punish them, so that he's very kind of this figure of this, almost like a Greek god. You know what I mean? Don't make him mad. Don't do something because he's gonna turn around and ruin your life, kind of. So I've just seen that as we our church community and my family and my husband and me, as we tried to talk about a God who is close, and he's the Emmanuel of Jesus, which is God with us, that's actually really impactful for people. That God would actually come and be with us, and that he is with us, and that he's actually not waiting for you to make a mistake to judge you, that when he comes in after the mistakes, it's actually to show grace and to actually get rid of, as I said, like some of the junk, to get rid of some of the things that are unhealthy in our lives, that it's actually for restoration, and it's actually so that we can become the people that he already sees us to be through Jesus, which is these, like healed, completely whole people. That's what he already sees, and then he's moving us toward that. And I found that really impactful for people here, that they've never heard that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people struggle with the fact that God is so personable, and they think he is somebody who's just out to punish them. And I love what you're doing, because when people realize that God is personable, they are willing to open up more and to go to God instead of trying to figure things out on their own. So that is definitely a
Yes.
wonderful work that you all are doing, Wendy. Wendy, what is next for you?
I was just today, the start of my new venture was today. So it's interesting timing, but I'm starting a community garden, which that's kind of a big term. I'm not exactly sure what the Lord has in store, but today, I said starting today because my husband and I were doing the unglamorous task of manuring our, our piece of land that we have, getting it ready to be plowed. And there's a few ladies, the Lord's really opened up this door for, I don't know how to garden, but I have a couple friends who do. And I shared this idea, well, what if we started this garden together? And what if you taught me how to garden? And then we can maybe invite some other ladies who don't know how to garden, or we have some single moms in our church. Maybe they can come out and garden, and then we'll just split all the produce. What do you think? And these other ladies were like, yes, let's do it. So it's kind of become just this, I don't know what it's going to turn into, and I don't know what the Lord has, but I see his hand in it, and every door is like opening, first to buy this piece of land, and then to get people who want to come. And anyway, all these, there's a lot of stories, but tools to work in the garden and these things. So I'm really excited about that as kind of a new project in my life. And then this year is the release of the book that we've been talking about, which is my first book. So that's also a new venture. So those two things that's enough for me, but those are the new things.
Yeah, I love it. How can people connect with you, and where will they be able to buy the book?
Yeah, so I'm at the beginning of my journey, as I said. So the best place right now would be Facebook or Instagram to go ahead and follow me. And I'm on there as Wendy Zahorjanski. I'm probably the only one with that name. So go ahead and follow me. I'm working on a website that's also going to be just my first and last name.com, wendyzahorjanski.com. So that's going to be coming up. Maybe it will already be out by the time this podcast comes out. I'm not sure, but that's going to be out in April probably. And then the book's going to be available on the website, and also it will be available on Amazon.
Yeah, I love it. Wendy, as we finish your interview, I want you to share a final word with the people. I mean, you've had so many experiences. What is the one thing you feel like people should absolutely know that they can implement into their life today?
That you can trust the voice of God. You can trust if he tells you to go, or if he tells you to say that thing that's in your mind, or if he's telling you to go and meet that person, that you can trust that voice, that he will never trick you, that he'll never take advantage of you, and that he will never lead you into a situation to embarrass you or humiliate you, that it's always an opportunity for your life to be enriched, and it's a door open for the work that he has, that he wants to do first in you and then through you. So I would say go for it. Trust the voice and go for it.
I love it. CWS audience, you have heard the challenge. Go for it. God is speaking to you today, but only you know what he is saying to you. It's time to act. Don't hold back. Take that step of faith and trust the voice of God and become all He sees you to be. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. And until next time, beautiful people, God bless.